It began with fire. The year was 1099, and the blood of thousands had stained the streets of Jerusalem. The First Crusade had reached its crescendo, the Knights of Christendom carving a path through the holy city with steel and zealotry. Bodies lay in heaps, the air thick with the stench of death and burning flesh. The victors saw themselves as the chosen, ordained by God to reclaim the sacred land. But beneath the sanctuaries and temples, something far older, far darker, was stirring. Beneath the ruins of Solomon's temple, the Knights Templar unearthed a relic that had no place in the world of men, an artifact not of divine providence, but of something else entirely, a thing of whispered secrets and forgotten blasphemies. Its surface pulsed with an unholy radiance, runes shifting in patterns that defied mortal understanding. Yet the knights, their faith twisted by temptation, did not recoil. They did not destroy it. Instead, they listened. The first heresy was not declared in defiance, but in awe. The artifact spoke, and the Templars listened. It promised power beyond reckoning, an empire forged not by will of men, but by forces eternal and absolute. They were certain that in the harrowing whispers of promises of grandeur, they had found their new lord. In their arrogance, they committed the act of ultimate heresy, casting aside their god, performing rites that no human should ever have known. And in this heinous act of blasphemy, they broke the world. And so, by their doing, the gate of hell tore open. Jerusalem was the first to fall. The heavens darkened, the sky split asunder, and from the gaping wound in reality, the abyss vomited forth its children. The streets, once thick with corpses, became something worse, a crucible of torment, where the laws of life and death fractured. The crusaders who had wielded the cross as a weapon now found themselves prey to horrors that knew no fear, no pain, and no end. Through their act of blasphemy, the heretics were born. The very knights who had opened the gate did not perish, they were remade. Flesh burned away, replaced by something stronger, something built to endure. Their souls blackened, their eyes reflected nothing but fire, and their faith no longer belonged to the God they had once served. They had become the first lords of hell on earth. Among them was Cordoba, the first tyrant of the 66, whose name would become a curse upon the lips of the faithful. No longer a man, but rather something else. His armor fused to flesh, his voice an echo of 1,000 blasphemies. He was the first to carve the sigil of hell's dominion into the blood-soaked soil beneath him. Under his banner, the first heretic lords gathered, swearing an unholy fealty to their new masters. And thus began the tyranny of the 66, a reign of infernal terror that would spread like rot through the heart of Christendom. At first, the church did not retreat. The Grand Patriarch of Jerusalem and his most devoted warriors refused to believe that the holy city was lost. With relics held aloft and battle hymns echoing through the burning streets, they stood their ground as the abyssal tide descended upon them. This was no battle. It was a massacre. The sanctuaries became slaughterhouses, the altar stones blackened with blood. For 3 nights, the last defenders of the faith fought in the catacombs beneath the ruins of Solomon's temple, well knowing that no salvation would come. And when dawn broke on the 4th day, the holy city of Jerusalem belonged to hell. The church, realizing the magnitude of what had been done, fled Jerusalem. They did not fight to reclaim the city, they abandoned it. The crusade had become a retreat, Jerusalem, the supposed kingdom of heaven on earth, had transformed into the wound of the world, a place where hell itself bled into reality. The Trench Crusade had begun, and it would never end. The war that followed was not a campaign of conquest, but rather of containment. The Holy Land was lost, but war had only just begun. The cataclysmic event of the Knights Templar's heresy set the world on an unending path of warfare, with the opening of the Hell Gate in Jerusalem marking the beginning of a conflict that would stretch across centuries, reshape civilizations and countries alike. The battle for mankind's realm had begun. Two years later, in the aftermath of Jerusalem's fall, heretic forces, bolstered by the armies of the Third Circle of Hell, launched a series of devastating campaigns, swiftly conquering much of the Levant. The faithful, reeling from the sudden onslaught, struggled to mount an effective defense against these infernal legions, and so city after city fell to the forces of darkness. Recognizing the strategic importance of Antioch, the remnants of the faithful fortified the ancient city, transforming it into a bastion against the encroaching forces of hell. Antioch became the focal point of resistance, its walls symbolizing the enduring spirits of those who opposed the heretics. For 7 years, the world of man teetered on the brink of oblivion. The heretic legions poured forth, carving a path of ruin across the Levant. The faithful was scattered, the strongholds crumbling, and it seemed as if nothing could stem the tide. But a prophecy foretold of salvation, the Great Iron Wall of Du al-Kanain. Though its origin is obscured by myth, its re-emergence in the year of 1109 in the lands of the Sultan of Rome was not merely stone and steel, but divine providence given by the very creator himself. As word of its re-emergence spread, the faithful embarked on the second great migration, crossing lands drowned in blood and skies choked with ash. Only a fraction survived the pilgrimage, for the heretics were ruthless and butchered them by the thousands, building blasphemous monuments from their remains. Yet those who endured found sanctuary. The gates were sealed, and the great sultanate of the invincible iron wall of the two horns that pierced the sky was born, unifying Islamic factions under a single banner. The re-emergence and fortification of the Great Iron Wall of Du al-Kanain, also known in some regions as the Wall of Iskander, served as a formidable barrier against heretic incursions, showcasing a united front in the face of damnation. In the year of our Lord, 1117, 17 warriors, clad in the white of the penitent, embarked on a mission that would end in agony everlasting. These were the 17 Martyrs, knights and priests who believed they could bring the word of God into the very heart of the heretic strongholds. They ventured beyond the iron wall and into the earthly domains of hell, carrying no weapons but their faith alone. What awaited these poor souls was not conversion, but unimaginable torment. Captured by the heretic lords, they were cast into brazen bowls, where they were burned alive, without ever knowing the mercy of death. It is said that their screams still echo from the molten mouths of those infernal idols, a chorus of agony that has not ceased in 800 years. For more than 100 years, mankind would struggle in the face of hell, yet the church, already besieged by external threats, faced internal strife as well during what would be known as the Wars of Triclavianism. This period became an internal schism, resulting in unrelenting bloodshed within the already fragile Church of the Faithful. The war against hell had already stretched on for over a century, draining the spirit and resolve of the faithful. The crusading armies that once stood united against the horrors of the abyss had begun to crumble beneath the weight of exhaustion, despair, and theological conflict. At the heart of this conflict was the rise of Triclavianism, a radical theological movement that rejected traditional church doctrine. The Triclavians believed that Christ had not died for the sins of mankind, but had been abandoned upon the cross, left to suffer by a God who had turned away from his creation. To them, the war was not a punishment nor a test. It was damnation by eternal suffering, absolute proof that humanity had been forsaken. This doctrine spread like wildfire among the disillusioned and war-weary. Soldiers who had fought in the trenches for decades, who had seen no end to the suffering, suddenly began to question the church's teachings. Entire battalions defected, their banners replaced with the black and red iconography of Triclavian martyrdom. And while the heretics marched unchecked, the faithful burned down their own cities. For the church declared Triclavianism a heresy, calling for the extermination of all of its followers. However, stamping out the movement proved to be quite impossible. Entire regions swore allegiance to the Triclavian cause, and soon the conflict escalated into open war. Millions perished as brother fought against brother due to theological differences, all while the forces of hell encroached with every moment. In 1224, the Council of Rome declared Triclavianism a doctrine of damnation, and as the first purge has begun, instead of ending the movement, it radicalized it. Triclavian crusaders seized monasteries, slaughtering those loyal to the church. The rise of Triclavianism shattered the unity of the faithful, plunging Christendom into an era of bloodshed. By 1241, Triclavian fanaticism had reached a fever pitch, culminating in the suicidal siege of Avignon. The brutality escalated in 1259, when the Triclavians crucified thousands along the roads to Constantinople, branding each and every one of them as heretics. The church retaliated mercilessly. 1282 saw the silent massacre, a night of fire and slaughter that claimed over 100,000 Triclavian lives. Finally, in 1306, the last Triclavian stronghold was crushed, its leaders executed, and its scriptures burned. And so the church declared the heresy eradicated, a statement which would turn out to be false. The war against hell had dragged into its third century, and though the faithful had stemmed the tide, they had never been able to breach the gates of hell. No human could pass beyond the veil of tears and return, for to step into the abyss was to be utterly consumed by hellfire, both body and soul. With this incomprehensible challenge faced in front of mankind, the Mendelist order was founded, a sect of genetic scholars and theologians tasked with creating warriors who would be able to enter the domain of hell. This order claimed that the flesh of man was weak, but saw salvation in the blood of the Redeemer, as it was regarded as divine perfection. And so they sought to clone the Son of Man himself, forging an army of holy titans. This endeavor was not just seen as arrogant by the masses, it was also immensely blasphemous. From their research and experiments came 12 paladins, the only 12 paladins that would ever be created. Still to this day, the church is unable to recreate the success of the experiments. Yet these specimens were the very perfection of genetic creations. Each stood more than 14 feet tall, their bodies reforged with orichalcum steel, and purified through relic-forced sacraments. They did not eat, they did not sleep, and they did not fear. The first and greatest among them, Saint Tancred, became the first paladin to lead an assault into the abyss of hell itself. Yet their creation came at a terrible cost. In seeking to create divine warriors, they had tampered with the very nature of the soul. Some whispered that the paladins were not truly men at all, but artificial creatures devoid of salvation. Of the original 12 paladins, only 9 remain. 2 have fallen in battle, yet it is rumored that the last one has turned traitor, now fighting on the side of hell. "40 years later, the demon lord Beelzebub unleashed a catastrophic plague upon humanity known as the Black Grail. This malevolent force infected tens of millions, transforming its victims into walking vessels of metastatic cancer and disease. The afflicted became thralls to Beelzebub, their bodies repurposed into weapons of war, blurring the lines between life and death. This period, marked by relentless horror and devastation, became known as the Corpse Wars. As the plague spread, the cult of the Black Grail emerged, comprising those who worshipped Beelzebub and sought to propagate the infection. The spread of the Black Grail was not mere disease, but design. Among those who reveled in the pestilence, those who bowed before the carrion throne of Beelzebub, were the Knights of the Order of the Fly. These chosen of the Lord of Filth did not simply spread the plague, they were its shepherds. Clad in armor pocked with rust and decay, their banners bore the sigil of a bloated insect, and wherever they rode, the land itself rotted beneath them. It was they who built the very first shrines of disease, grotesque temples fashioned from the corpses of the afflicted. They anointed themselves in plague-ridden filth, believing each suppurating wound a divine gift, and with the birth of their order, the cult of the Black Grail gained generals to lead their war upon the living. They performed grotesque rituals, sacrificing countless innocents to summon the Grail hegemons, towering abominations embodying Beelzebub's will on earth. These hegemons, born from the fusion of corrupted beings, possessed immense power, capable of decimating entire battalions and extending Beelzebub's corruption even into the graves of the deceased. The world would be swallowed in almost 18 years of blackness, yet amidst the darkness, a beacon of hope emerged in the form of Joan of Arc. In 1429, she confronted Yersinia Rex, a formidable Grail hegemon whose presence had terrorized Europe. Through divine intervention and unwavering faith, Joan of Arc slew Yersinia Rex, driving away the Black Grail's influence from mainland Europe. Her monumental victory not only halted the spread of the plague, but also rallied the faithful, reigniting resistance against the forces of hell. This triumph marked a turning point in the ongoing struggle, demonstrating that even the most formidable manifestations of the Black Grail could be overcome through faith in unity. Joan of Arc's legacy became a testament to the enduring spirit of humanity in the face of overwhelming darkness. Yet even as the faithful rejoiced, a great loss was suffered. In 1477, the city of Argos was taken by God, and it was no more. For what sin, what failure of faith the Almighty saw fit to erase it from earth, none can say. But in a single night, the walls of Argos vanished, its people were unmade, and in its place stood only a chasm of silence. To this day, no heretic dares tread where Argos once stood, for even the damned fear that which God himself has forsaken. For more than 300 years, the war would continue to rage across the realm of mankind. In 1545, the city of Antioch would face its utter destruction due to a mysterious infernal weapon that to this day still remains unknown. However, the indomitable spirit of the faithful led to its reconstruction. The Sword Congress of Vienna in 1559 decreed the rebuilding and fortification of Antioch, with all faithful nations contributing to its defense. By 1595, the walls of New Antioch stood tall, symbolizing mankind's resilience and unity. In 1666, a newly created heretic fleet executed a surprise raid, capturing Gibraltar and established the base of operations against Europe. This strategic move granted the force of hell access to the Atlantic, marking a significant shift in the theater of war and threatening the western realms of the faithful. In the following centuries, naval war would escalate before reaching a gruesome peak when the heretic fleet under High Captain Rijeka defeated the English fleet at the Battle of the Bloodied Cliffs. The death of Admiral Nelson in combat marked a dark day for the faithful, underscoring the heretics' growing dominance on the seas. 65 years later, heretic scientists, with the aid of the demon Marbas, developed the first modern submarines. Launched from the base of operations at Gibraltar, these vessels wreaked havoc on merchant navies, leading to widespread famine and showcasing the ever-evolving nature of the heretics' approach to war. Yet the boldness of the heretics was not confined to the sea. In 1872, the forces of hell made their boldest move so far against Europe. The heretic legions, bolstered by infernal war machines and demon-bound infantry, stormed the city of Rijeka, slaughtering its defenders and raising twisted effigies of their dark masters. This was no mere raid. It was the beginning of a full-scale invasion. The city was fortified and transformed into a blasphemous stronghold, an unholy citadel from which the heretic war machine launched its conquest of the European mainland. From Rijeka, waves of darkness spread like a festering wound, striking deep into the heart of Christendom. The conquest of the European mainland would culminate in 1894, the moment when the faithful's resolve was shattered. In a simultaneous and coordinated strike, 3 of the holiest figures in Christendom were assassinated: the Supreme Pontiff, the spiritual leader of the Church, the High Prophetess Aelia, a beacon of divine prophecy, and the Holy Roman Emperor, the last secular protector of the faith. The assassins were no mere men. They were the death commandos, hell-trained specters of war, handpicked from the seventh circle of Inferno itself. Cain, Barabbas, and Haman, the 3 greatest killers of the heretic legions, struck at the same time in perfect unison, their blades cutting through centuries of order. With the faithful leaderless and in chaos, the heretic legions launched a lightning offensive, sweeping across both the Levant and Europe. Hell's nobles, leading titanic vanguards of demonic war machines, shattered defenses and pushed further into Europe than ever before. It was a year of total slaughter, where faith alone was no longer able to hold back the tide. With the war reaching its peak and Jerusalem still lost, the Church made a desperate decision to look beyond the earth. In 1899, the Church space program was initiated. Faithful scientists, guided by divine providence, sought a way to reach the stars, hoping to find sanctuary beyond the reach of hell or uncover celestial weapons that could turn the tide. The true purpose of the program remains cloaked in secrecy, but one thing was certain: if victory could not be found on earth, it might be written in the heavens. In 1907, the greatest war machine ever built by mortal hands was completed, the moving fortress of Britannia. No longer a mere city, this vessel had become a mechanized colossus, an ironclad land ship forged in the image of mankind's defiance. Constructed as the ultimate beacon for human ingenuity, it was designed to withstand heretic artillery, demonic incursions, and even infernal weather. With its monolithic armor, vast legions, and holy weapons, Britannia became a beacon of resistance, a city that moved wherever the war demanded. A mechanical wonder, which even hell itself learned to fear in its approach. 3 years later, in 1910, the Heretic legions launched an all-out assault on Cordoba, hoping to shatter the faithful's hold on Hispania. The battle was a brutal deadlock. Heretic artillery reduced the city to rubble, but the defenders refused to yield. The streets ran red with blood, and the sky choked from the fires of war. Yet despite their relentless bombardment, the heretics failed to break through into the heartlands. Cordoba would remain standing, though scarred and ruined. The war had raged for centuries. Truth and myth had by now become one. To preserve the church's legacy and record the unbroken will of the faithful, Melchior Giselle of New Antioch published the official and true Annals of church history in 1910. It was a chronicle of war, sacrifice, and divine struggle, meant to immortalize the faithful's endurance in the face of annihilation. Yet even as it was read in the war-racked halls of Christendom, many wondered, would history be enough if the future itself remained uncertain? 4 years later, in the present day, the year 1914 is one of grim anticipation. Both sides, faithful and heretics alike, prepare for major offensive operations. Across no man's land, the war has reached its boiling point. Furious skirmishes, brutal raids, and desperate power struggles rage as both factions seek to secure information, relics, and strategic positions. The war machine of hell grinds forward, and the armies of the faithful dig in. The next battle may not end the war, but it will decide who controls the ruins of this world. The landscape is devastated, crisscrossed with trenches, and scarred by continuous bombardment. Despite technological advancements in weaponry and tactics, neither the faithful nor the heretics have gained a definitive advantage, perpetuating an unending cycle of bloodshed. This begs the question, as the world continues to burn, why does the fire never dwindle? Why does this war never end? The Trench Crusade is more than a war. It is a force of nature, an immovable storm that has outlasted empires, devoured civilizations, and shaped the very concept of existence. There was a time when men fought for victory. Now they fight because they know nothing else. This ceaseless, grinding attrition has become a struggle where neither the devoted nor the damned can claim victory. Why does it continue? Why is there no end to it? The reasons are many and buried deep in blood-soaked soil, where the answers are as endless as the suffering itself. The damned are an unbroken tide, a legion which cannot die. The forces of hell do not seek victory, they seek perpetuity. For them, the war is not a means to an end, it is the end. They do not conquer, because conquest implies conclusion. Instead they spread, corrupting the land, not to claim it, but to defile it, to drown it in despair, until all existence becomes indistinguishable from hell itself. Demons do not need to win, they need only to ensure that the war continues. The longer men fight, the more blood spills, and the deeper the abyssal rot takes hold. Every fallen warrior is a soul denied heaven, another body for the infernal war machine, yet another cog in the endless spiral of slaughter. And so the faithful march, and so the trenches grow deeper, and so the war rages on. Yet the devoted does not fight for glory. They fight because they have no choice. There is no retreat, no sanctuary beyond the battlefield. The war has swallowed the world whole, and they are trapped inside its iron jaws. The devoted are born into war, raised for war, and die in war. The faithful cannot falter, for to falter is to surrender the world to damnation. They cannot stop fighting, for if they do, the abyss will consume everything. And so they dig deeper, expanding their trenches, stacking the corpses of their fallen into bulwarks, measuring victory not in battles won, but in how long they can delay the inevitable. Their faith sustains them, but faith alone is not enough. The war demands more. It demands blood, bone, and soul. For the devoted, to die in battle is an honor. To abandon the war is heresy. Yet not all who wage war do so in the name of faith. Some do it because war is their dominion. Behind the trenches, in the halls of power, there are those who profit from the suffering. The war is not an affliction to them, it is an industry. To them, every battle is another contract, every siege another opportunity. They supply the weapons to the front lines, build fortifications, ship endless legions of men to the grinder. These are the people that feast while others starve. The people that grow rich while the world crumbles. These people will never allow the war to end. To them, peace is the only true enemy. This war is their kingdom, and they will see it burn for eternity if it means they can remain its kings. But even the lords of hell do not march in perfect unison, for though they are bound by a shared purpose, the ruin of creation, they are also bound by their own greed, their own hunger for dominion. Archdevils plot against one another as much as they do the faithful, each seeking to carve out a greater domain for themselves in the ruin of earth. There has been times when the heretic legions turned upon each other, when great hosts of the abyss clashed in the wasted lands beyond Jerusalem, spilling infernal blood in battles whose names have been lost to time. If not for their endless bickering and infighting, the world might have already been swallowed whole by the entirety of hell. And so the war continues, year after year, century after century. The sun rises over battlefields where men die in droves, and it sets over mass graves, where the bones of the fallen are buried beneath the weight of a world that cannot escape its own madness. The trenches deepen, the dead pile higher, and the fires never dwindle. There is no stopping this war. There is no peace beyond the trenches. There is only the Trench Crusade, and it will never end. Hey there, Hazmat here. That was my first jump into the lore of Trench Crusade, but I can guarantee you it won't be the last. Unfortunately, I have probably messed up a couple of things, as at the moment, piecing the lore together is quite difficult, seeing that it's scattered across 2 different Wikipedia pages, about 100 Facebook and Instagram pictures with text, as well as a partial official lore compendium, a set of books with play rules, as well as messages from both Discord and their Patreon. So if you want a more accurate picture of the lore, I advise you to go dig into it yourself. But if you like this video and want to see more, make sure to let me know in the comments below. As always, a big thanks goes out to the Hunters Lounge, specifically the exclusive Johnny Sevens, the exclusive Warmonk, the exclusive Geechee Boy, and the exclusive Rat. The VIPs: Corvo Bearslayer, Derivative, Tuck Powell, Gino Lucero, Goose, Hambone, Jiminel Bob, Corey Peterson, Michael Thornhill, Mordef Menace, Ryan, Slip, Stas Biestek, Sunrise Phoenix, TJ Crane, Texas Toast, and the Wizard of Copper. And of course, all the regulars. If you enjoy the content I produce and would like to help support the channel, consider signing up as a member on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. The link is in the description below. And thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next one.